Hi, friends, and welcome to episode 3 of Myths, Murders, and Monsters. We're your hosts, Alyssa,
And I'm Kelsey.
and today's topic is paranormal triangles.
So everyone's heard of the famous Bermuda Triangle, but did you know there's actually multiple other triangles with weird and spooky histories behind them?
Ew. You already know how I feel about the ocean, and I feel like this episode is just going to be very detrimental to my health.
Yeah, if you are not an ocean fan, this episode is not going to change your mind on that.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So what is it that actually defines a paranormal triangle?
So, I Googled this. So, surprising, guys. I actually know some things.
Wow.
I know, shocking. I'm prepared for once. So apparently, what makes these things makes up a paranormal triangle is something called a vile vortices. There we go. Those words. And the fact that it has vile in the name is just not promising.
Yeah, it doesn't sound great. So is it does it have to do with the Earth's core and magnets and stuff, or what exactly is happening in the triangle?
So apparently, it is a naturally occurring anomaly due to, yes, you are correct, the Earth's electromagnetic field being stronger in that area than anywhere else in the world.
Okay, so they hypothesize that planes go missing, boats go missing. There's paranormal activity that's said to be happening here, like people hearing voices or seeing things. So what explains that?
Well, I mean, obviously the paranormal. Duh.
The paranormal. Okay.
Simple answer, obviously.
Supernatural.
For all
End of episode.
Debunked. Supernatural, done. But for all of the people who don't believe in the supernatural, which, disclaimer, this podcast probably isn't for you, but for all of those people who don't believe in it, it is that electromagnetic disturbances are being caused by hot and cold currents colliding at these these specific points. And that is what's creating all of the chaos.
Okay. So basically it's like a swirling energy vortex that just sucks everything in, is what people think.
Yes.
Okay.
Reason number 1275 million why I don't like the ocean.
It's actually interesting because there's many more. I grew up hearing of the Bermuda Triangle. I think that's a pretty common one.
Yes.
But I didn't realize how many of these triangles there actually are out there, including in Great Lakes, Michigan, and I think there's one in Massachusetts as well.
Right. I didn't believe that there were that many of these. So apparently there's 12, and they mirror each other on the latitude and longitude axes, which is crazy.
That's interesting.
Right? I didn't know, who knew that latitude and longitude would become handy outside of social studies and training for map reading. What?
It wasn't handy for me in social studies either. So
absolutely not. That was one of those things that I learned it and then whoop, right out the other ear.
Yeah, I had a coach for social studies, so I think everyone knows that means that you don't actually learn anything.
You had I was a coach, what?
A coach taught social studies.
I thought you needed someone to coach you through it.
Well, now I do, because I didn't actually learn anything in social studies, so now I do need a coach for social studies.
Or commonly called a tutor, but here we are.
Right.
Anyway, so one of the first triangles that we're going to be talking about is located in the Devil's Sea, or it's called the Devil's Sea.
That's a fun name.
Right? It sounds really promising.
It's also known as the Dragon's Triangle, right?
Yes, it is. And we'll kind of get into that in a little bit here. So, the Dragon Sea is located in the Pacific Ocean near Japan. And as we've said, it is said to play to a host of mysterious forces.
And how did this kind of come about? Do you know?
So apparently, This has been documented by ancient Chinese civilizations going back to 1000 BC.
Oh, wow.
Right? Are you bored? Are you yawning at me right now?
I was yawning, but it's not you.
Rude. So it goes back like to these ancient civilizations, which is like wild to me. But we also know that ancient civilizations did not fully grasp like natural forces. So they assumed that it had to be like paranormal or like a giant monster, or in this
Right.
instance, a giant sea dragon.
Right. They wouldn't even know even close to what we know now about geography and the way the world kind of works
Right,
as far as
exactly.
science goes.
So for them, it was just easier to believe in a mythological creature, or believe in like a not even mythological because they believed in it, but believe in like a giant creature creating havoc.
So they believe that there was like a giant dragon in the sea, and that's what caused like boats and planes and all these things to disappear.
Yes. So they thought that the dragon had like an insatiable hunger, and it would just lay in wait, and then hopefully a boat would pass in that specific area in his
Hmm.
territory, and then it would eat it, or it would like jump out and like grab things from the sky. But back in 1000 BC, they didn't have airplanes, so it was mainly boats.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. And another thing is like going along with like it dating back to 1000 BC, it also was around back in the time of Kublai Khan, who, if you don't know who that is, he's the grandson of Genghis Khan, who was a really bad guy.
Who, if you don't know who that is
Just a really bad guy, okay? Okay.
he was an empire, right?
He was an emperor,
Emperor.
yeah, of the Mongol Empire in the 13th century. So, a long ass time ago.
Yes. So
Anyway,
what happened with his whole ordeal in the
so
Dragon's Triangle?
yes. So Mr. Kublai Khan, he attempted not one, but two major invasions of Japan. And do you think they were successful?
I'm thinking the dragon had something to say about that.
You are correct. So on both occasions, like his fleet had to cross the Devil's Sea. And on both occasions, the fleets were completely obliterated, like just wiped out.
So what? I
And
mean, what wiped them out? Like, did they ever find pieces of the boats, or was it looked into? Like, what happened, or it
I
was just
mean,
random?
it didn't really say if there were survivors. I would assume that there were some who were able to say that the boats were destroyed. However, if there were not survivors, I mean, clearly the people who sent them there would get word that the boats never arrived and they never came back. So
Yes.
I guess. But now this is according to the history books. On both occasions, the fleets were completely obliterated by like extreme weather. And
Okay.
the people of Japan assumed that either one, it was the giant sea dragon, which I mean, that was their prevailing thought. But now, like, as history comes around and whatnot, the historians believe it was due to typhoons, blah, 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 blah.
Typhoons, natural disasters.
And I know. But then there were others back in that time who believed that the typhoons were actually sent from the gods to protect them. So it was
Okay.
either the sea dragon or gods send typhoons, which I mean, that's pretty cool.
Right. Either or, they didn't get invaded, so that's a plus.
That is a plus. That is a plus. So this like goes back like ancient civilizations, but there are like more recent occurrences, and by recent I mean like in the 1940s and 50s.
So yeah, because the Japanese government doesn't like allow transportation through the Devil's Sea anymore, right?
Right. They deemed this after all of these like mysterious disappearances. After all of this, the Japanese government actually deemed the Devil's Sea unsafe for marine voyaging and transportation.
So you know it has to be pretty bad for the government to take action to protect the people, which is bad
Right?
to say, but I mean,
Right? Which, I mean, maybe it's a big conspiracy. Maybe it's a big cover up. Like the government knows that there's a fucking giant sea dragon there, so don't go there. Like,
So what
wrongo.
happened in the 40s and 50s then?
So a bunch of like fishing boats and planes were lost during this time, but the main ones were during the end of World War II, where a long-range fighter plane went missing. And one of the last things that this pilot was able to transmit is like one of the spookiest things I've ever heard. Are you ready?
Yes.
He literally, like, his last words were, "Something's happening in the sky. The sky is opening up."
What?
Right?
That's
Like,
weird.
I have chills, like the goosebumpers from this.
That's so unexplainable.
I
I
know,
mean,
like,
what else could he have meant?
was he hallucinating? Was he, like, experiencing some kind of, like, turnaround kind of thing? I don't know. Like, his gauges were going crazy and he thought that he was looking at something, but he really wasn't. I don't know. But that to me, no. Mm-mm.
Maybe there was like poisonous gas coming from his plane.
Could be. Could be. But he was never found and his plane was never found. And then in the
That's weird.
1950s, right? No, like no remnants of any of these things are ever found. And except for in one instance, but we'll get to that in a minute. So in the 1950s, the Japanese government actually sent out a specific research vessel to investigate the disappearances. And this correlates with what we had said earlier, that the Japanese government deemed it unsafe for sea travel.
Mm-hmm.
So, surprisingly enough, do you think that ship ever came back?
I'm gonna go with a no.
Nope. The ship went missing, but the wreckage was later discovered. However, the 31 crew members were not.
So the boat was destroyed.
Yes, the boat, what, like, they found, this is like the one instance where they found the wreckage of the ship.
That's so weird.
Right? I mean, I'm assuming that the crew members died, but like we don't know because we weren't there. So that's just like wild to me. And it was after that that they were just like, no, you're not allowed to go there. Not allowed
Yeah.
ever.
Which is probably for the best.
Right.
But there are people who travel across the Bermuda Triangle, for example, and I'm sure all these other triangles, and they don't disappear.
Maybe
So
they're
it's
not.
not like every single boat or plane, right?
Maybe they're not worthy, or maybe the monsters in the area have just had their fill for the time and they're like, not worth it.
Maybe.
They're just taking a rest. We're tired. We're tired of creating doom and gloom and wreaking havoc everywhere we go.
Apparently.
Yes. So we've kind of touched on like the paranormal aspect, people believing that it's a giant sea dragon or like it's aliens, like that pilot, like what that pilot was insinuating that the sky was opening up. I mean, I guess that's what he was insinuating. I don't really know because I wasn't there. So,
Weren't you?
I'm old, but not that old, okay? But or like ghosts or whatever. I mean, some people even attribute it to like sea sirens, all of that type of stuff. But
Oh,
I
I
guess
love sea sirens.
I do too. I love a good sea siren story, so we're gonna have
Me
to do
too.
a story on that.
Maybe the next episode.
Yes.
That's
So
our next one.
yeah, maybe in 2 episodes. We'll see.
Yeah.
So now we have to look at like the real, what real, real causes are, because
Quote unquote.
quote unquote, So we already talked about like the hot and cold currents crossing across these vortices, which result, and people believe that it can result in electromagnetic disturbances that trap ships passing by. Like it causes all of their instruments to just go haywire and they can't figure their way out. So they're just like stuck in this like vortex of doom and destruction.
Ooh, that's scary.
Right? Right? The other thing that is believed, which I don't know what's worse, is underwater volcanoes.
Oh.
Right? I'm not a fan of volcanoes in general. Like, hello, Pompeii. But underwater volcanoes.
So
So
how
they,
would that explain the planes though?
I
Are
don't
they
know.
saying that they're like erupting at that time that the plane is crossing? But wouldn't that like someone have known that, or, smoke or whatever? They would have seen something.
I don't think it would necessarily be smoke. I'm envisioning it as like a shoot of water, like into the air.
That's true. I guess there wouldn't be smoke if it was underwater.
Right? It'd just be like a spewing of water. What would you call that?
A spout. I don't
There
know.
we go. I like spewing better, but okay, a spout of water just happens to
Whatever
happen.
floats your boat.
It just happens to happen at this time.
Right.
Which
Okay.
I don't know if I believe that with the.
Although I don't, yeah, because how often are volcanoes exploding for this to happen so often?
Right. I mean, maybe underwater volcanoes just are a little more angry than the not underwater kind.
Maybe.
But that would just have to be like the biggest mind fuck of all. Like you're in your airplane just like and then all of a sudden a spout of water just like comes out of nowhere. Like I'd be like
Yeah, that would be pretty crazy.
But I guess if I was going to go out, I would prefer to go out that way.
I guess.
But I think if I have to believe in like one of these like scientific reasons, I would think that it's the electromagnetic disturbances with the airplanes and not pew-pewing of water from the ocean.
I would have to agree.
It just messes up with their instruments and they crash. Now, there is a third environmental cause that could mess with boats. And
What?
this is created by methane hydrates in the seabed, which I don't know what methane hydrates are, blah, blah, blah. But like it explodes. Guys, we don't get super scientific in this podcast if you haven't figured that out yet. But it like explodes from the bottom of the seabed and it comes up to the water's surface as like ice-like deposits that have separated from the bottom of the ocean. And then I guess it like essentially forms an iceberg and boom, you're done. Titanic.
Oh, wow.
Style. Yeah. Just the iceberg wasn't there 1 minute and then it's there the next minute. Like
that would be wild. Right? It just pops up like, and it would be flat, I would assume, right?
Yeah. You wouldn't see it.
So yeah, you can't even see it. But how would that explain the planes?
Again, I think that the planes are just like the electromagnetic field or aliens, whatever you prefer.
Or maybe there's like some reflective thing that happens.
Could be. That is a good possibility. I have heard of that.
Especially with that guy saying the sky is opening up, something's happening with the sky. Like maybe there's something that happens when it meets the air, like the oxygen.
Could be. That is a good thought. I did not go down that rabbit hole, but that is a really good thought.
No, I tend to have those sometimes.
Sometimes.
So that's the Devil's Sea then.
Yes.
A very interesting little triangle that I'm sure a lot of people have heard of, but it's definitely not as popular as the Bermuda Triangle.
Right.
So another more recent one is the Alaskan Triangle. Have you heard of that one?
Briefly, but I don't like where it's going already.
So,
I just don't like it.
Alaska in general has some shady stuff going on up there.
Yeah. There's so much that's uninhabited. Like, that's where the shit goes down.
Right. So this triangle specifically, more than 16,000 people have gone missing. Like airplane passengers, hikers, locals, tourists, etc. within the Alaskan Triangle since 1988.
What?
Yeah, that's a huge
number.
Telling
me within the last 35 years, 16,000 people have gone missing in this area.
Yes.
I don't like that.
Yes. So this one isn't the sea, so you'll like this one a little bit better. It's land.
At this rate, I don't like it. I don't like it as much as I don't like the sea at this point. Alaska, you're not on my list to visit. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it's on the northern coast of Alaska, and like we said, it's famous for alien abductions, Bigfoot sightings, vanishing airplanes, paranormal, all the fun stuff.
All of the fun things that we love to talk about.
Okay.
So, what are these disappearances that have kind of made the Alaska Triangle a thing? Because as we said, each like triangle has specific things that have made it well known as a scary place to be.
Yeah, so in 1972, I think was when the area got more like public attention. I'm sure there was like myths and lore of the people who kind of lived around the area before that, but
Mhm.
that was when it attracted more public attention because a private plane went missing and it seemingly vanished into completely thin air, and it was carrying a U.S. House Majority Leader Hale Boggs
Oh,
and Alaska Congressman Nick Basish.
okay.
So for over a month, 50 civilian planes and 40 military aircrafts, plus dozens of boats. They searched the area. It was like 32,000 square
Oh,
miles.
shit.
No trace of the plane, the men, the wreckage, no debris was ever found.
That's wild. Like, where did it go? I mean, okay,
Right.
32,000 square miles is bigger than my mind can possibly comprehend. I'm
That's
thinking
a
of like a
fair
tornado,
point, but
you know. But
it's
like
a fair
that's
point. But what could have happened? I mean, no wreckage was even found.
you would think that someone over time would have found some form of wreckage. And I mean, they were flying over with planes, so you would think that like an aerial view they would have seen something.
Right.
And it is the military like trying to find like help out as well. So I feel like this is the best possible search party you could ever have.
Yep.
Unless
And
unless
nothing
they
was
like
found.
unless they went down like over the ocean and then RIP, I guess, but
Right.
that's just wild. And of course, the disappearances that would kick it off and make it well known would be government officials.
Of course.
So it makes me wonder how many people had disappeared well before that we just don't know about and people just don't care about.
Right. I'm sure there were multiple incidents.
Most likely, yes. So another one that I have heard about is the Palmer brothers. I just like heard it in like passing, so I don't really know much about it. What do you know?
Yeah, so the Palmer brothers is super weird.
Okay.
So it started with Michael Palmer. He was 15 years old and he disappeared while riding his bike. And it was like a small town northeast of Anchorage.
Okay.
And it was like 4 a.m. Him and his friends were riding their bikes home from a party.
Okay.
And his friends kind of said he like fell behind. So they slowed down to wait for him, but he never showed up. So they were like, okay, well, he must have just gone home. Like, I don't know, a different way. I don't know. Kind of weird. But the bicycle he had been riding, or one like exactly the same, was found by the river.
Okay.
And the sneakers, the same size and brand as the one he was wearing that night, were also found neatly placed, and they were wet next to the private airstrip that was like 200 yards from the river.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, and he was never found.
I have questions. One,
Right.
what type of party were they leaving?
I think it's pretty obvious.
Is it? I mean, was illicit substances involved? Because that
I'm
place
sure.
two.
I'm sure they were at the least drinking.
I'm assuming. I'm okay.
And this was in
Probably.
like 1999.
Okay, all right, fair.
To the 90s or early 2000s. He was a teenager. Like I'm sure there was at least beer at this party.
Two, what about the buddy system? Those are some shitty ass friends.
That's
who
what
were
I'm
like,
thinking. Like no one knew that he was behind, and You
They
didn't
only
think to like
slowed
circle
down.
back and look for him?
Right, they slowed down for a little bit and he wasn't there and they're like, "Oh, yeah, I guess, bye." Like, no. What happened to leave no man behind?
Right. And there were reports of him, like, from other people at the party that said that he had, like, been, like, in a fight, and then
Mm.
someone had said that he left with, like, someone older in a vehicle, but once, like, questioned more, those kind of, like, they found that none of them really, like, held any merit.
Mhm.
So they
Yeah.
really had no idea what happened to this kid.
But that's so weird that, like, they found a bike that looked like his and then his shoes. Why were his
And they
shoes
were wet.
right, so clearly he like, if those were his shoes, he clearly went into the river,
Yes.
but what like, where did he go afterwards? Why would he just, like, neatly set them down by an airstrip and then just leave them?
I'm assuming he would have had to have been kidnapped.
That's the only thing I can think of.
But I don't know why the person would have taken off his shoes.
Maybe he took his shoes off himself because they were wet, and he
Maybe
was
he
like,
was running or something.
"Could be," and he, like, took them off and set them down and then just abducted.
But it still doesn't explain why he rode his bike off of the path. Or was he lured by something?
Could
Or
be. I mean,
someone? You never
I'd be
know.
lured off a path if I saw Bigfoot, maybe.
So it gets even weirder.
Okay, yeah.
So 11 years later,
Mhm.
Michael's brother, Charles Palmer, also disappears.
Okay.
So he was on a snowmobile. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Snowmobile? Trip with
the
his
one thing I
family.
pronounced correctly.
Good. So he was like out like riding these snowmobiles with his family, and all of a sudden he got separated from his crew. So super similar story to his brother, which is so weird. His family states he was last spotted traveling in a different direction than their cabin, which it's like, why didn't they go after him?
Oh, really? Again, the no man left behind, especially in the Alaskan wilderness.
Yep. So then he was also not reported missing until the next day, which why would you not report him missing? So even if you thought like, oh, maybe he's off doing his own thing, he didn't want to go back and we're going back. If he doesn't come home that night and it's the Alaska wilderness, like you said, why would you not report him missing until the next day?
Right. Hello. And just a disclaimer, if they tell you you have to wait 24 hours to file a missing person report, that's bullshit.
Yes.
Anyway, back to the story.
So he was reported missing the next day, but by then, of course, there had been a snowstorm. But even with like the soft, deep snow, no footprints were found near the snow machine. They found the snow machine.
They found it?
And the helmet he was wearing was never located.
Okay. So they found the snowmobile, but they didn't see any tracks of where he went. And they didn't find his helmet.
Right, or him, obviously.
Obviously.
And yeah. So if he would have like left the machine in search of like a main trail or cabin or something, you would think that, I mean, they would still have found a body even if he went off searching and froze to death or whatever the case. So another search was actually conducted after the snow melted. Mm-hmm. No trace of him or the helmet. And you would think, unless he kept the helmet on for warmth, why would he have kept his helmet on?
Right. That's so bizarre. Especially like after the snow melted, he would like his body would have still been there. He wouldn't have traveled, like his body wouldn't have like moved with the melting snow.
Right.
Wild. I don't like it.
Very weird.
I don't like it. That's just I have thoughts again with this family. Like, what happened to the leave no man behind?
Right.
If you notice that your son has decided, or your friend has decided to veer off in the opposite direction that the group is going, why would you not at least send one person or two or the entire
Probably
group?
Probably two.
Or the entire group for that matter.
Yeah.
To go and see what they're doing. They're like, hey, bro, are you okay? Like, dude, come on now.
Right.
And it's just weird that it's brothers who disappeared in like a similar fashion. They're just like, I'm gonna go do my own thing. Okay, bye.
Yes. It's very, very strange how similar the two situations are.
Could it have
And they
been
both had pieces of whatever they disappeared with left behind: the shoes, the bike, the snowmobile, and
right?
completely nothing.
Insane. I feel like since it's a family, maybe they were both called by aliens. That's not really where I was going with that. But maybe it was like a mental health thing and they're just like, bye. But that doesn't make sense. You feel like I feel like you would have found them.
Yeah, I mean, there would have been a body if they would have done something to themselves. Um,
Maybe it was
and
big.
this one, it's like the first kid, okay, someone could have kidnapped him and taken him on a plane and been
Right.
gone, disappeared.
Right.
But this one, where could he have gone?
The only thing I can think of is one that there was like a secret underground cave system, the secret tunnels,
Yeah.
or Bigfoot at this point.
Bigfoot is an option.
Yeah. Or an alien abduction. Or
Yes.
maybe like a wildlife scenario. I don't know. I feel like
I
there's a
mean, I
bunch
think
of
nature's
comparisons.
like the easiest thing to chalk it up to. But
Right.
wouldn't there be bloody snow?
Right. You would think that there'd be blood. Like if he was injured in some way, you think that there would have been some form of like shredded clothing left behind from
Right.
an animal attack. Blood,
Or
something.
bones.
Or bones. Yes, bones. I mean, we are made of bones, so that would be natural to find them. So like I need answers. Where did he go? Who took them?
It's
Why?
very bizarre.
Maybe it's someone stalking their family. But
Maybe.
I don't like it. I'm going with aliens and Bigfoot at this point. But like, okay, with Alaska, I almost said Canada. Oops. With Alaska, I feel like it's a little bit different than the natural occurrences that happen in the ocean. So like, is there things that set Alaska apart from like the natural occurrences in the ocean?
Well, definitely geography plays a huge role, I think.
Okay.
Because Alaska's huge, like
Yeah.
we've mentioned, like it's ginormous, and most of it is uninhabited by people. So we think. I mean, most of
So we
civilization does not go out there. So we have, honestly, it is like similar to the ocean, the fact that there's so much unexplored territory that there
Mhm.
could be so much out there that we don't know.
Okay.
And then, they have glaciers, they have giant holes, hidden caves, like building size crevices, like all
Ew.
this geography is like the perfect burial ground for ships or aircrafts or people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and there's so much out there that it's like once something happens, once someone becomes stranded or there's a crash, snow can easily bury any trace of the person or the plane.
Right. Okay. So now we have to take into account, does the snow stay there year round? Like in certain
Probably
areas.
different areas it melts and in different areas it doesn't. And then I would assume too, it's like it doesn't just obviously continue building and building,
Mhm.
So it's like I'm sure it melts down even if it's not fully melted, and then it'll build up again, etc. But that's a good point though. I don't know how much of
I'm
it.
just thinking of the dude, like the guy out snowmobiling with his family. I can't imagine that they are that far up north that the snow wouldn't melt and you wouldn't be able to find a trace of him.
Well, and they did say that after the snow melted, they conducted another search. So I'm assuming it was pretty
Because they
decently
weren't like
melted.
way out into the tundra
Right.
up super far north. Okay. That's
But
just
another theory is the same as the Devil Sea and the Bermuda Triangle, is that there's like some type of energy vortex. So, how they say there's like positive vortexes that spiral upward in clockwise motion.
Mhm.
And then, it's conducted like healing, meditation. They call these places like the Egyptian pyramids, Stonehenge. I think the Sedona Desert, they call them like sacred, and they say they have healing properties.
Interesting. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
alternatively, there's like negative vortexes that spiral downwards counterclockwise, and it
Interesting.
creates like a draining or depleting energy.
Oh, that would make sense then if they all of a sudden just started like veering off on their own.
Yes, because they say that it can cause like health problems, depression, nightmares, disorientation, confusion, like all these types of visual and auditory hallucinations.
Okay. All right. That would, I mean, I guess that could make sense. Like if the family is prone to having these, like prone to neurodivergence or something along those lines, that they would be easily impacted by this.
Yep.
Like, I guess that would make sense, especially if it's two family, like it's two members from the same family.
And there has to be something going on because there have been search teams that have reported that their compasses malfunction up to 30 degrees off when they're out searching.
Interesting. Okay.
So there has to be something going on with like the electromagnetic field.
Definitely.
And then volunteers often like say that they experience like mysterious symptoms while searching the areas, like phantom voices and confusion and dizziness, which could be dehydration or it could be these energy vortexes.
That, I mean, I buy the energy vortexes, like deplete, like causing hallucination and that type of stuff. I do buy that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty, like, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. And then our last favorite theory, Bigfoot. It's always Bigfoot, in my opinion. It's just,
it always comes down to Bigfoot.
I feel like he just has such a bad rap. But I mean, sorry, dude, you're in places where people disappear. So, my bad.
Bigfoot.
My bad. Maybe in Alaska, though. I'm reading a book, and it's called like 30 Days of Night, and there's places in Alaska that obviously doesn't have sun for that amount of time.
Yeah.
So maybe in the book it's because of vampires, like people disappear because of vampires. Maybe there's vampires up there and they're just like nah, 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 nah.
That could be.
Possible. You never know.
You never know.
So those are just 2 of the 12 that are around the world. And yes, we've talked about we've kind of correlated the Bermuda Triangle in with it, but all of it's the same, under the same pretenses. People disappear under the same pretenses, and it's just super unexplained. And I guess Bermuda Triangle is just the most popular because there were so many like well-known ships, like military training ships and that type of stuff that disappeared in that area. And that's why it's more popular because, you know, if the military loses something, they're going to want to try to recover it.
Right.
Wild.
But I would be super interested to hear if anyone out there has stories about any of these mysterious triangles.
Yeah, like if you have personal experience or anybody who you know someone who's had personal experience or just information in general, because clearly we only know a little bit about the things. So yeah, just drop it in the comments and we would love to hear it and feature it on our show. All right, that concludes our brief touch on paranormal triangles around the world. Join us in 2 weeks for our next episode.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Don't forget to like and subscribe and turn your notifications on so you know when our next episode drops. Bye!
Bye!